Hi, welcome to Cults and Culture. There's actually been a slew of rule changes proposed by the commissioner and stuff. I'm going to actually think about it for a day or two and actually make a video about that. Maybe actually even tomorrow. Anyway, we're up to, for our best pictures, Braveheart, 1995's best picture winner. It's the Mel Gibson film. I ultimately, okay, I did win makeup. Okay, ultimately, I do really like this movie. It has sort of a huge sort of problem that I think if you try to think of it as a historical film, and it's absolutely kind of shitty because the movie is aggressively ahistorical, aggressively not really about the real random William Wallace. In fact, the movie knows it's really ahistorical because the script actually has a line at the beginning where they say. Historians in England will call me a liar, but history is written by the victors, which is okay. Like, that doesn't excuse your ahistorical nature. Anyway, some choice examples. Prima Natra which is the first night, i.e., lords get to have sex with brides on their wedding night. That's not a thing. It was never a thing, especially at this time. Serfs don't know what freedom is. The Battle of Stirling, which is sort of the central piece of the film. That battle was actually a bridge. It took place around the bridge, and the bridge is actually very tactically important. Princess Isabella was, I think, 4. Might be 9. She was under 10 when William Wallace was executed. So obviously she did not get impregnated by him. There's that. Anyway, there's just so many. Normally this stuff doesn't bother me. And most of them don't bother me. Like Prima Natra doesn't bother me. Because there's, in the script, there's sort of a, absolutely, symmetry between Prima Natra being instituted by Longshanks and then his line being continued not by his son, who's gay if you don't pick up on the subtext, but by William Wallace. There's sort of a just desserts edge to that, so that doesn't bother me. The thing that really bothers me in this film, in terms of its historical thing, is they motivate this all the commoners and serfs for wanting freedom from England. But the thing is, what the fuck do serfs care? Like, that wasn't really, like, freedom is not a concept of their daily lives because they're serfs and they're tied to the land. And like, they don't really fucking care if the noblemen are Scots or English. Like, they're just harvesting mud, and so it's really bizarre to me when so that aspect, like, that's the one thing that's really hard for me to get over. With that being said, if you think of the film as a Lord of the Rings sequel or a high fantasy film, it's much, much better. And you think of Scotland as not an actual place, but as a magical kingdom. The movie becomes much better. It's very striking. The movie has a lot of Mel Gibson psychological leakage in it, though. So, like, the violence is very, very brutal. And then also the homophobia, which I'll talk about in a second. And then also William Wallace being tortured, similar to, like, it's very similar. Some of the shots are very, very similar to what happens in Passion of the Christ, which is very strikingly like Gibson's persecution complex. Anyway, I'm going to bring up a couple of scenes now. I do like this movie, despite everything I've been saying. The main reason is it's absolutely filled with striking images, and the violence and the battles are very, very exciting and engaging on that. sort of gut visual level, but it's stuff like this, which is one of my favorite scenes in from the 90s, because at the beginning of the story, William Wallace's father and brother get killed because of the King of England Longshanks, who's absolutely a delightful villain in this film, much to the chagrin. That shot right there is so utterly beautifully composed and striking, and this movie has a great sort of very, very masculine image energy to it, and it has a sort of a very masculine beauty because it's all mathematical and all bold, striking compositions. And then there's also the sort of tension between the vistas and stuff like this with the backlighting, which is utterly, utterly gorgeous. But then the violence and the actual guys always look so dirty and scruffy, because, you know, it's supposed to be 1280, and there's just something about that tension and the visuals that is absolutely engaging to me. That's that has a very masculine beauty, and this is something that I think Gibson does very, very well in most of his films. Like, he knows how to film violence such that it feels very, very striking and very, very, in a sense, beautiful, which there's a whole slew of issues when you think about that too much. So there's that. Anyway, the other thing I want to talk about really famously is this movie ahistorically portrays Longshanks' son as gay, and then very, very famously this scene happens where the guy's name is Philip, which is the son's lover, gets thrown out of the window. The movie, like I was saying, there's a very masculine energy. Some people would say like toxic traditionalists or toxic masculinity. And so there's this scene right here. I think one of the reasons why I hated this movie for a long time is this scene, because like I picked up on the fact that they were supposed to be lovers, and this was like one of the earliest representation of gay folks I ever saw in cinema, and it's absolutely sort of disturbing as material. This scene today would not be allowed, would not play like that. It would be enough to sink this film's Best Picture chances. Now, in the context of the movie, I actually think the homophobia sort of works, because the king, like, it makes sense at this time that Braveheart and Wallace and Longshanks would be homophobic, and the problem is we know Gibson himself is sort of homophobic because of, like, he wouldn't, like, he you know, he lets us know his opinions. So it's a little bit hard to deal with. It does mar the film for me, but at the end of the day, I really like this film. It's striking. You just got to think of it as not history, but fantasy. Anyway, that'll be it for Cubs and Culture. See you guys later.